Hey you guys, welcome back. So let me tell you about my absolutely crazy week. Okay, so on Tuesday, today's Friday, on Tuesday, came out to my van, started it, and I noticed it's making like a little chirping noise, kind of like when a belt is going bad. It's making that noise, and then once I put it in reverse, it started like doing that loud screeching belt noise, right? So I backed down the driveway, and I drive about 2 houses up, and it stopped. And seemed fine, everything, it was driving fine, all that. So I was like, I don't know, I'm not a car person. I thought it was maybe a fluke thing. So I went, grabbed my first dog, and went to Starbucks after. Drove to Starbucks, and then I drove home. And when I turned the van off, it made like this little dinging noise, like I needed to look at the dashboard, like I had an alert. And I looked, and it had a picture of a battery, like on the dash. It had the little battery symbol, and it said start engine, and it just showed the battery, right? And I was like, that's weird. So I called my repair shop that I always take it to, and I'm like, hey, like my van is showing this like battery symbol, it says to start the engine, like what's going on? And they told me, they were like, well, sometimes the key, like if you had the key in your pocket and then ran back inside or were doing something like that, he said sometimes it will give you like an indicator like that. So he told me to put the key fob, if you have the Mercedes van, there's like a little slot that you can put your key fob in. That's kind of like the ignition for the push start. That was one thing, sorry, I should have mentioned that when I called him, and he asked me right away if I had a push start. I do have a push start, so that's what he told me to do. Put the key fob in. He's like, you'll be good, that message will go away. So I did that, and the message did go away. And I went to my next client. Everything was good. I groomed the entire dog, and then I went up front, and then I had this thing that instead of saying start engine, it said stop engine, and it had the battery symbol. And I'm like, that doesn't seem good. I'm like, but maybe, again, I'm not a car person, so I'm like, well, maybe it's still like recalibrating with the key, So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to turn the van off here just in case, because I'm still in my client's driveway at this point. So I'm like, I'm just going to drive it home, and I'll call them again. So I drove it back home, turned it off, called them again. They didn't answer, so I just left a message and was like, hey, like, I don't know if I'm overreacting, but basically now it's saying like stop engine has got this battery thing, so I just want to make sure. And then when I got home and I turned it off, it immediately was like start engine again with this battery symbol. And I'm like, okay, so I'm starting to like get pretty nervous at this point, because of course my last stop of the day was new clients. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, I just want to get through this dog, or this last 2 dogs. I'm like, just hoping for the best. So I come out again and turn it on again, do the key fob thing, the warning is gone. So I'm like, okay, maybe it is just the key fob thing. Maybe I overreacted. By the way, the shop did not call me back yet. It had been like a few minutes or so. They hadn't called me back, but the symbol was gone. And again, it was still driving fine. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this last stop, because again, it was a new client. I really wanted to get these dogs done. I did not want to reschedule a new client. So I go to her house, get the dogs, do the bath, everything's going great, and then I'm blow drying, and the blow dryers, like, okay, first I was like, I had 2 dogs, so I'm like blow drying with the high velocity, everything was going fine, and then I put one in the tub, I had the fluff dryer going on it, and then I had the other one on the table, and I'm blow drying with high velocity, and the van starts going like, and the dryers are like dying, and then they come back on. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's using too much power using both dryers, even though I do it all the time. But I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll just turn off my big dryer, so that way at least I have like the little dryer to work with to finish up drying these dogs, because they're, at this point, one was a Yorkie, so luckily you just look at that dog and it's dry, but the other one was like a little, I think she said it was a schnoodle, but it was kind of looked like a cockapoo, especially the hair wise. So I'm like, trying to get this dog dry. So I get it up on the table. I have just the fluff dryer going, which is the weaker dryer, and I'm fluffing with the brush. It was going good for like maybe 5 minutes, and then that started surging to the point that the dryer actually turned off. Now, somewhere in this time frame, I also noticed my music cut out, but like I really didn't think anything of it because sometimes my phone can be funny, like especially if I'm in a spot with no signal. So I was like, nah, didn't even make the connection until my dryers died. And then I went to look up front and I noticed the whole radio was like completely off, like the screen was black and everything. Like, so it wasn't my phone, it was like the radio turned off. And then I noticed I was getting really hot in the back, like my AC was not running. And then I looked up front and it's again, stop engine, da 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 da. So I call the repair shop. I'm like, hey, they answered this time. I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry. I know I keep bothering you. I was like, but now my radio cut off, my AC is barely working, my dryers are shutting off. I was like, I kind of think it's more than just the key fob thing. And he's like, yeah, he's like, if your radio is dying and the AC is going out and all of that, he was like, that's pretty much a signal that the alternator is not charging the battery correctly. So basically, he's like, your battery is dying. I'm in the middle of a groom, right? I got the cockapoo mostly dry. I was letting it just kind of dry in the van while I worked on the Yorkie. I'm halfway through this Yorkie's groom, and he's like, basically, your van's gonna die. It could possibly die in that driveway. He said, he was like, well, you know, I was like maybe 15-20 minutes from the shop, and he was like, you may be able to get here. He's like, but if you have to go on the interstate, then I probably wouldn't, because you'll probably die on the interstate. And I'm like, I'm gonna, like, the van's gonna die. I was like, so what do I need to like wrap up these dogs? He's like, yeah, you need to wrap it up. You need to bring them inside. So I'm like, holy shit. So, and I told him, I was like, well, if the van's gonna die, I'm really not comfortable driving it. I was like, so, I'm gonna call a tow truck. So I go and bring the dogs back, explain to the owner what's going on. She was so nice, so understanding. Like, I literally could not, like, it was very embarrassing, but I could not have asked for a nicer response from her, considering this is her first time meeting me, first time grooming her dogs, and now my van is about to die in her driveway. And she was like, I will take you home. Like, are you sure everything's okay? Like, I'm like apologizing. She's apologizing to me about my van. She's like, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. I'm like, girl, I'm sorry I can't groom your dogs right now. I feel terrible. And one was in the middle of the haircut. Like, luckily it looked okay enough to like give it back, but it was not done, which really bothered me. And it bothered me I couldn't finish the bath, and that the cockapoo I felt like was still damp around its ears because the dryers died on me, and it was just you know. So anyway, I get the dogs back inside, I call the tow truck, and I have to call my mom so that somebody can come get me because I didn't want to pay the extra fee for the tow truck to drive me home. So anyway, I call my mom, she comes, gets me, and the tow truck comes to get my van. Thank God. And I don't know if this is like this everywhere, but like, I think I was only sitting there waiting for maybe 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, but it was pretty quick. And the tow truck came, got the van, got it over to the shop. It was about it was almost 5, it was like 4:30 or so when they were coming to get the van, and basically he couldn't get it to the shop before they closed that day, but he knew where the drop-off was. I already called the shop, set up all the arrangements so they knew it was coming and who to charge and all that. So, they took the van in. It took, let's see, brought it in Tuesday night, so Wednesday, Thursday. They called me this morning, today's Friday, and they told me that the alternator did in fact go out, that they had diagnosed it. It was the alternator that went out, and that they would be fixing it. And they told me, like, we're just waiting on the part to get here. As soon as part gets here, we'll get it fixed. It'll be early next week. But it was today. They called me back a few hours later. I, of course, already like rescheduled everything. And then they called me back and they're like, hey, it's ready if you want to come get it. I was like, oh, yeah. So I went and got it. Oh, and by the way, in the midst of all this happening, I didn't know initially that it was a van problem. So I had called Hanvey in the midst of all this. And I talked to Paul from Hanvey. He's like their tech guy in the back. And he was very helpful. He agreed, like, because I was waiting on the tow truck when I talked to him, and he agreed it was the alternator. He did tell me that once they replaced the alternator, that I would need to do a check on the inverter system, because he said basically that when they go in and do their part, that sometimes it can interfere with how the inverter charges. So he said I would just need to make sure that that was all set up correctly, so that would make sure the inverter was charging, so that we didn't have another problem. So I told him, I was like, I would feel a lot more comfortable, because I'm only about 30 minutes from Hamby, so I was like, I feel a lot more comfortable if I was able to have you guys look at it and just double check for me that everything is good to go. They agreed. So as soon as I got the phone call today saying that everything was replaced, and by the way, good to know, you guys, the alternator was covered under warranty, so I did not have to pay anything to the repair shop for my van today. So best case scenario there, because I was really nervous about that. I had people messaging me, it's gonna be thousands of dollars, you're about to spend so much money. No, it was free. It was covered under warranty. So if you are on the fence about warranties, get it for the van, girl. I'm telling you. I'm actually going to reach out to the guy I bought my van from and see if I can do any additional warranties, because the repair shop did say that my warranty will expire in February. So definitely recommend that warranty if you don't have it. So look into that, because that probably saved me at least like $1,300 from what I've heard about how much these alternators go for. So I got the van back from the shop. Another important thing to note is that the shop told me to make sure that I'm always plugging my van in at night, because the inverter system puts a lot of strain on the alternator, so it can make the alternator go out. So make sure, if you are somebody, I think people in northern climates are better about plugging their van in every night, but I know a lot of groomers that are in like Florida that don't plug their van in at night because they don't need the hot water heater to be working overnight. But the repair shop did tell me today to make sure that I'm always plugging my van in at night, because it will, if I don't, then it'll put extra strain on the battery. So I got my van back. It's called, by the way, if you're in the area, it is Velocity Trucks. They work on diesel engines, they work on semi trucks. I've seen them work on like FedEx, UPS, RVs, everything. They're amazing. I absolutely love them. I 10 out of 10 recommend them. 15, 20 out of 10. They're amazing. Like seriously, like they made my day. When they just, first of all, just having the van fixed made my day. And then when they were like, it's free, I was like, you guys, I was like, I can't believe this. I literally thought this was about to cost me so much money. So anyway, they used to be Christopher Trucks. Now they're called Velocity Trucks, and they're so good. Seriously, if you have a diesel van, please, look into them if you're in the South Carolina area. They have 2 locations. Anyway, so, I went and got the van from Velocity Trucks, and then I took it over to Hamby, and Paul looked at it for me. He was very nice, very helpful. He checked everything. He checked the little box up front that's like when you're driving, that little screen. Sorry, not it's like kind of a box, kind of a screen. Anyway, he checked that. Checked all the, sorry, my phone's about to die on me. So anyway, he checked all that, went in the back, checked a few things, looked at everything, made sure like nothing burnt out or anything like that. And he was really awesome. But I did want to say that it cost me $200 to have Paul come out for 5 minutes, press 5 buttons, and go inside. I don't even think he was out there for 5 minutes. And it's not Paul's fault, by the way. That's just like how Hamby is, I guess. And yeah, so basically, if I could go back and do it again, I would not have wasted my time going up to Hamby. They'd sent me a video I could have used, and I could have just done it that way. And basically, he didn't even have to adjust anything. He just checked it all and was like, yeah, it's working. And yeah, so that was $200 for about 5 minutes of his time. And when I got there, it's not like he was like actively working. He was like sitting in a break room. So I kind of thought that was crazy that it was so expensive. So basically, if you don't have to take it to Hamby, like if you can do it in a video, I would definitely recommend doing that, because that was my first actual issue with my Hamby van. So I've never had to bring it in for anything before. And it was kind of like a crazy situation, because basically, just being real with you guys, I had done a video with Hamby about 2 years ago that basically they had me come in with my van and they filmed it and had an interview with me and all this stuff, and in exchange for my time and my interview, they gave me a credit at Hanvey. I'm just gonna be real, it was for $1,000, and it was supposed to cover like anything on my van. When I got there today, I still had, I think, at least $700 credit. And basically the woman I talked to told me that that actually expires, and basically she would look into it. They did end up taking the $200 out of that credit, so I don't know if that means it didn't expire or what was going on with that. But regardless, $200 is insane for 5 minutes of work. I mean, it is crazy. So anyway, it is what it is. Like I said, this is my first time I've ever had to get Hanvey look at something. So I just wanted to like be real with you guys. Like, I'm somebody that has promoted their vans like crazy. I know I've sold at least like 5 to 10 vans for them. And it cost me $200 to have them glance at my van real quick. So basically, if you need to take your van up to Hanvey, be prepared, because that could be a big bill. Like, I would be curious to know how much it would cost me if something actually went wrong in my van, if it cost him $200 to not even fix anything, to just look at it real quick. So that was kind of crazy that Hanvey actually charged me more than the repair shop that actually spent like 2 days working on my van. So anyway, yikes. But it is what it is. So I may or may not still have a credit with them. I hope I do, because I think that would be a little bit unfair, seeing as basically that was them paying me for my work. This is my first hearing that that expires. Like, I was kind of saving it in case like something came up with the van. So now I'm just kind of like, I don't know what's going up at the Hanvey Engineering. I've been seeing little tales on the Facebook group, and I'm just sitting back like keeping to myself basically. But that was my personal experience. I have the invoice to prove that they charged me $200 to come out and be like, yeah, you're good. Seriously, I couldn't have been there for more than 5 minutes. So that was a bit shocking to me. So I was really, and I again think Paul did amazing. Nothing to do with Paul. And I don't know whose call it is on like how much they charge for those kind of things. I was expecting to pay for it. Like, I wasn't expecting a free service or anything, but I was just a little shocked that it was $200 and they didn't even like have to fix or replace or anything. So it's a little cray cray, but you know, it is what it is. They got to do what they got to do, I guess. But who knows? Anyway, so I'm back up in action. I have my van. I just went and tested it on Stevie and Hammer. It's doing great. And I'm so thrilled to be back on the road. So I feel very fortunate that this is all that happened with my van, and that it was an easy fix, and that it didn't cost me a ton of money. And yeah, so I thought it might be helpful to tell you guys what happened in case you guys end up encountering something of the same, because if I could go back, I probably would not have done the last stop of the day. I would have gone ahead and canceled that client, because that probably would have been better than my van dying in her driveway. But you live and you learn. So here's my recommendation to you, that if you have those kind of issues, go ahead and just bring your van in. I would not try to finish your day if your alternator is going like mine was. But you live and you learn. Again, everything worked out fine. My clients were really understanding. I'm only about 3 days behind because I missed half a Tuesday. And yeah, so I've got almost 20 dogs that I gotta figure out where I'm gonna groom them, but we'll get it done. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you as always for watching and listening. I hope that all your vans are running amazing, and that you are making tons of money, and that you're not sitting at home worrying about your van like I was this week. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you as always for watching me. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.